I don't. We forgot to figure out who's sitting where tonight. I'm good. I need the exercise.
While they're fussing, hi everybody. I hope everyone had an incredible Easter. Right? Amen. We had 2,338 people. And the most exciting thing is we had several salvations, didn't we? I mean, that was awesome.
One of
And
the
I
biggest,
hope we get to baptize some of them on Sunday.
one of the biggest compliments was the girls that got to volunteer in the parking lot.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's always the most talked about ministry here at The Rock, is the parking lot. And I'm dead serious. There's more people that comment about the parking lot than they do anything. Is y'all?
All right. This is your night. You get to open this up.
Oh, hi, guys. My name is Kanan. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus, and I have dealt with so many life issues.
They're not laughing at your
It's
life
an inside
issues.
joke.
Okay. Okay. And anyway, I have dealt with anxiety and divorce and broken relationships and alcohol abuse. I've lost a lot in my life, and the Lord has given it back to me and then some. I keep coming back to Celebrate Recovery. We're here tonight to talk to you guys about some triggers and how to avoid those triggers. Some things. I personally have many dysfunctions and many triggers so I don't want to make it all about me. So I have a panel up here that we all have so many different issues. I feel like we can reach more people and you guys can relate to more of us because we're so very different. We are a family, but we're so very different and we have so many different experiences that we want to share with you. And with that, I guess I'll let them introduce themselves real quick and then we'll start with the lesson.
I'm still Jeff, and I'm up here tonight. Nothing's changed in the past few minutes. But I've dealt with a lot of things in my life, but right now, I lost my brother 4 months ago, and still can't talk about it, so I'm trying to work my way through grief. And the most important thing that I've learned about dealing with it so far is I know it's there, and to have a plan ready for when those really tough times show up. So, yeah, I'm struggling with grief. And so that's what I'm struggling with the most right now.
Hi, I am Marsha Joy, or MJ, and I, my struggles are abandonment, low self-esteem, and insecurities. And I really didn't realize how much I'm still dealing with those things. Abandonment isn't such a bad thing, but the low self-esteem, I still find myself putting myself down. And I get on other people, especially him, about doing that. And you know, and I'm like, I know who God is, you know, and when he made all of us, he didn't make junk. He didn't mess up. He didn't make any mistakes. But it's like so many things that, you know, we've allowed other people to say, you know, to us. We allow those things to stick to us. And I was telling Kanan today some of the things that, we're going to get into that later, but I was telling her some things that I didn't realize that were, wow, that was still bothering me. And, but I know God is still greater than anything that bothers me, so.
Amen. Amen. Hey, I'm Jason. Is this on?
Nope.
Nope. All right. I'm Jason again. Okay. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus, and in the past I've struggled with alcohol and pornography. And right now, I too am struggling with grief, losing one of my biggest supporters, my stepdad, about 6 months ago. But since then, I have been able to use some of the things I've learned in Celebrate Recovery, or in our recovery program, and use those things to cope with that in a healthy way, and as opposed to trying to escape the hurt and the heartache from it.
So I'm Elo, and I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. And I've struggled with people pleasing. Am I on? This thing just sounds really soft. I've struggled with not being able to say no a lot of times. I think that's the biggest thing that I've had to look at myself in the mirror and try to do, because I take on too much, to the point where, the perfect example is right before we started tonight, and just how quick I got mad. And over something out of my control, out of anybody's control. I just let it get to that point where I was like, I had to take a step back, and I had to breathe, and I had some great people kind of like just look at me and threaten to kick my butt, which I probably needed.
And
You just said "but" on live on TV.
That is going to be tame compared to what she's going to say tonight, so.
But with one T.
No, there's two in that one. I already lost my train of thought. So, but I've also struggled with a lot of anger, and I think those two kind of correlate, because if I can't say no, then I take on too much, and then I get frustrated because I've overpromised myself to other people, and I guess I could be people pleasing as well. But we're all different. Some of my bigger triggers that I've had in life have been alcohol and pornography, and just myself. When we knew we were going to do this panel, I started doing some reading, and some different people that I was reading, their triggers is themselves. And one guy, he's like, I immediately trigger every morning when I wake up because I'm in active addiction. And now I have, does that work? There we go again, trigger.
Okay. Y'all stop me anytime that you have anything to add while we're going through this. I'll pass those around. What are addiction triggers? A trigger is anything that brings back thoughts, feelings, or memories of an addiction. Triggers happen for people who are in recovery from a substance abuse. They also happen for people who have gambling, sex, food, and other types of behavioral addictions. The most important things to know is that triggers can lead to relapse, and that's why we're up here sharing what we do to avoid our own relapses into our past hurts, habits, and hang-ups that we all have. It's crucial that you recognize the signs of an addiction trigger so you can take steps to avoid or manage it in a healthy way, such as staying away from people or places and learning how to cope with different emotions. Understanding your triggers and coping with cravings is essential in maintaining sobriety and developing better habits.
Can I ask something?
Absolutely.
Can I ask something? Can I ask something? Now I forgot what I was going to ask. Here's the point. Here's what I got out of that. You know what's coming.
Yeah.
You know what's coming. I mean, come on, we've all been addicts for a while, and we all have always known that thing which triggered us when we were in our addiction. And even being sober, or having some clean time with whatever issue that you're dealing with, those things that happen that trigger us are still going to come whether we're clean or not. That makes sense? So we know what scenarios to stay away from, what to avoid, and things like that. But I think the most important thing, and like I said a while ago, knowing they're coming, we can be prepared for them. Have a plan. Always have a plan in place because you know it's coming. Right. And so I think that's what you just pretty
Absolutely.
much said.
Environmental
is you know what's coming.
triggers.
Be ready for it.
Is like the first category that we have, and specific locations that remind you with your past use, spending time with people who actively use drugs or alcohol, financial problems or stress, conflicts, romantic breakups, and divorce. Emotional occasions such as vacations, anniversaries, celebrations, and holidays. Seeing substance-related marketing on social media, movies, TV shows, that sort of thing. Those are triggers. And so you have to be ready for those kind of things. And I can tell you, those are so real for me. Alcohol is my past life. And I remember I took a vacation in October and with someone I love, and was sitting out on a patio at a restaurant called Cosmos. I still remember a Cosmopolitan, go figure, drink, be delivered to the table, right? I still see it. And if my tongue could have rolled out and hit the floor, I would have stepped on it. And I still remember that. And I was on vacation last week, and I saw someone bring out a drink, and I still see it. I watched a movie, and I never watched TV recently in the last month. It was Ticket to Paradise. And I was like, that's a gin and tonic. It could be a vodka tonic because they're both clear, but there's a lime and it's bubbly and it's in a you know, short ball glass. So that's what it. Yeah, I still see those, and those are my triggers. The visual triggers for me are real, and I remember them. They plant on my mind.
So, question, since you brought that up, you talked about some things that trigger. What particular triggers might be a problem for you in the near future?
Oh goodness, in the near future. What's coming up in the near future? Well, I'm in a
Just in
job
general
transition
future.
right now. Stress can be a trigger for me. Emotional heartaches can be a trigger for me. Getting in my own mind can be a trigger for me. Right now is the job change and the life change that's about to turn me upside down, and I'm really not sure what to expect, which I have a testimony coming. I'll let y'all know what that's going to be when I know in July.
I'm going to ask you one follow-up question, then go back to that first one for anybody else. You've done a job change a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Did you face triggers then, and how'd you overcome those?
Yes, I do face triggers. Well, number one, obviously I don't go to bars, but sometimes you can't. When you go to the Olive Garden, you don't sit at the bar. A year ago, I went to, I had a birthday a year ago, and I went to the 501 restaurant, and what did I do? There's no tables, no reservations, my lack of planning. Sat at the bar. What happens? You order a drink. That, for me, I cannot sit at a bar. I cannot do it. It's a bump in the road for me, and it will cause me to fail. Cause a relapse? No. I've had a couple bumps in the road over the last 8 years or so. Never, praise the Lord, have I relapsed and gone back to my old ways. But it can cause destruction, and it has caused destruction in my personal life. Choices that you make follow you everywhere you go. You have to be ready for that kind of thing.
And there's something that can happen. I mean, you might not have gone back into relapse after 2 trips to that bar. Don't get so confident that you feel like you could go in there and have one and leave.
Yeah.
Because eventually you'll find yourself staying a little longer, having another one, and having another one. It's a gradual thing, right? I don't know of anybody in here that's ever dealt with any issue that it just happened overnight.
It is dangerous to me.
It built up. It was a process, and the process kept being fed because we kept going to it. We might not have ever intended on having a second drink or going back a second time, but we did and had more, went back and had more, and went back and had more. So don't get overconfident that you're in the clear, you know, just because you've had 2 successful ones. I mean, the third one might be the thing that really.
Right, and you saying that just reminds me of, because I have to base everything off of Scripture. You know, where it says that a man shouldn't think more highly of himself than he should, and it's not just thinking more of yourself. Like everybody else is lower than you. It's not just that. It's also, don't think that you're so high and so mighty, and you've been fighting something for so long that you won't have that trigger, won't happen, and then you relapse, and then you're mad and stuff all over again. You're mad at yourself. Don't ever think more highly of yourself than you should. Always put God first. And it's like, okay, I'm going through this, and I'm feeling this certain way. I need your help. I need you to help me right now, because I'm about to go get this. I'm about to say cheers to somebody, and it's like, just don't think more highly of yourself that you cannot fall. He's there for you, but don't just think so much, that you don't think that you can fall, that you can't fall.
Yeah, triggers are inevitable. We've talked about people, places, and things being a huge part of that, and changing those things. And one thing I always remember about triggers is the word HALTS, acronym for hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and stressed for the S.
That describes me perfectly.
HALTS, ELOY. So anyway, that's something you can commit to your memory. If you are triggered, you could try to identify, okay, well, what's really going on right now? And, changing your your thought patterns when you are having those thoughts. Bringing up struggling with pornography and sex addiction for many decades of my life. That's one thing I had to do is retrain my thoughts, because at any point, I could have a thought and I just have to say no. That's not a thought that I want to have. It happened, but I have to take care of that immediately. When, like I said, my stepfather passed away a few months ago, and wanting to escape or trying to identify a time that I might be alone, that I maybe could take a drink, or something like that. I had to own that thought and take it captive and deal with it immediately. Otherwise, that little thought becomes a big cloud, and it can really follow you around, or that's what it would do to me.
I've got the best way to avoid environmental addiction triggers is to become aware of your surroundings and the people around you. That's the best way to avoid it. Being around certain people can lead to relapse, so limiting your contact with them is crucial. Additionally, taking time out for yourself, exercise, reading, and all those sort of things can help you deal with that.
All right. There can be a negative to taking time out for yourself. It's good, but if you use it to shelter yourself from everything else going on, that's a bad thing. Absolutely take time for yourself, whether it's meditating, praying, whatever. But don't become a hermit. Lock yourself up away from everybody, because then that can trigger other things that you may not be aware of just yet. And I can say that from example, because I'll get depressed, or I'll get angry, or I'll get into my feelings whatever way, and I'll just lock myself in my house. And I know then that's when I'm the most vulnerable, because I have a phone. It's easy to pick this thing up and look at anything I want online. TV, any idle time that you're not doing something productive could completely backfire on you and go the wrong way. So remember, you can take time out for yourself. You just have to do it in a positive, healthy way.
Yeah, one of the most vulnerable places you can ever find yourself if you're trying to work through a specific issue is when you're by yourself. In my addiction, when I was an addict, we didn't have meetings like this. I mean, this was back in the 70s, right? And so, no, I'm sorry, in the 80s. Only thing I knew was to, after I discovered Jesus, was to grab a hold of his robe and let him drag me through life. But I had to purposely put myself in places where it was about Jesus. I'd go to church. I might not have known what the preacher was talking about. But I would go because I knew it was a safe place to be. If I found myself alone in my apartment, obviously there's going to be some challenges there. I would purposely go out there and get in my truck and go somewhere, just be in public. I had to be around people.
But gas wasn't $3.50 a gallon back then either, was it?
No, it was about 79 cents a gallon. You could drive around all night long. But the point is I had to be around people. And
Building a strong, solid support system. If you don't have friends that support you because they're in their own mess, if you don't have family that supports you for whatever reason, come to Celebrate Recovery. We will support you. We are a family here. Keep coming back. Stick with it. Make yourself go. If you stay home, then you open yourself to emotional triggers, boredom, loneliness, anxiety, all this. And when you get into that, y'all know that's a bad place to be. It's a bad place to be.
Yeah, self-care is not isolation from your community. You do need some, I say time alone, but not isolating time alone. Get a breather. Everybody's not a people person. That's A-okay. But identify that and just don't isolate.
I mean, here are some common examples of some emotional triggers. Feeling lonely or isolated. Feeling overwhelmed by activities and responsibilities. That was me tonight. Facing rejection. Feeling powerless in certain situations. Being too hard on yourself for mistakes you've made. Yes, exactly.
And me.
Reduced self-esteem due to an unrealistic portrayal of how you see yourself. Don't live your life on social media. That's one of the biggest things right there. Because there's so many filters you can do to make yourself look happy. There's a couple that make you look grumpy. There's tons of ways to make yourself look better than you are. So don't try to impress that next person. Just be comfortable in who you are. And I say that because I struggle with that every day.
Yeah, the worst thing about the social media thing is you compare yourself to everybody else. right? You might be sitting there really, really struggling, and you look at all of these pictures, and, you know, they've been, like you said, I don't know the word, they've been doctored or whatever. I don't know what it,
Photoshop.
correct term. Photoshop, yeah. And so you're not really getting the real thing, and they're putting their best up there. But what's dangerous about that is we compare ourselves to other things, and I don't think that's a good thing to do, because naturally you're going to think you don't look as good or are not doing as well in life as they are, and you'll just beat yourself up.
Yeah, you'll beat yourself up because you want to look like that. But if you think about it, it's like that's not even how they look. Because they got the filters and like
False
the Photoshop.
advertising?
Yeah.
False advertising.
Somebody had posted this should be a crime because one person looked one way, but then after they put their makeup on, they look totally different. It's like that should be a crime because that's not even them.
Yeah, I would even say be careful. You know, social media and the internet does have its uses, but even watching encouraging videos, or if you're learning something, it's easy to get caught up in recognizing that, well, you know what, I'm not far enough in my recovery that I'm doing as well as this guy that's giving good advice or whatever the case may be. So just be cautious.
Yeah, don't compare yourself to where someone else is.
Right.
So some healthy ways to navigate around this stuff is create a new routine that does not involve activities associated with substance abuse. Keeping busy. That's what we're talking about with social networking with like-minded people, with other people who are in recovery, with other people who are seeking the Lord and putting the Lord first. That's what should be priority, is socializing, interacting, and staying connected, not isolating. Set clear and healthy boundaries with the individuals in your network who still use drugs or alcohol. Setting boundaries is not fun for either person. I mean, it can be very, very hurtful. It's imperative to your own walk forward. You have to do that, and you have to stick with the boundaries that you set.
So would going to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning be considered keeping busy and engaging in activities such as reading or anything like that, or exercising? Would that be a good thing?
Always. And if you notice through this lesson, exercise on all of these different triggers is listed. Every
I tried to
one.
take every exercise word out of this lesson, but I missed about 20 of them.
That was what helped my addiction. I'm one of the blessed ones. My addiction turned to exercise. I got the same endorphins and adrenaline as drinking my face off did. I felt good, only I didn't have a hangover. I didn't feel bad the next day. I felt good, and I started changing and feeling better. So I took one addiction and changed it to a positive addiction, which was fitness and nutrition. And I'm all about that now. I won't.
Yeah, but this is not that lesson. This is
I
not
need
that
that.
lesson.
They don't even get, they're careful not to get me started.
That's why I'm up here trying to stop her on that one.
I know there are people in here that think we're cursing up here every time the word exercise is said. It's a curse word.
I was that guy for a long time.
But I you know, because of confidentiality, I got some folks in here right now that I could point out that started exercise programs and ask them how they are doing.
It will change your
There
life.
is
and
no-
yes, it will.
There is no better testimony than to ask somebody who's involved in one. And
when
you
you
could
feel
ask them
good.
how they feel about themselves now, and I guarantee you they're feeling great, and they've got something a little extra in their arsenal to say no to that thing that has always defeated them before. Yeah. So exercise is not a curse word. It is a incredible tool.
Okay, I've got one line that's in our lesson, and I'll stop. Exercise releases endorphins that produce a natural high, which can provide an alternative to drugs or alcohol. And y'all, I found it. I'm here to tell you, I feel good, and that's why I do it. You just got to make it a habit. Just like getting up and brushing, y'all better be brushing your teeth.
And
Get up and exercise.
It's as simple as just moving. Okay, now I don't want you to think that when you say the word exercise, that means you're going in there and spending an hour and a half pumping iron, running at top speed and all of that stuff. It's simply moving.
Yes.
Getting yourself moving first thing in the morning is the best thing that you can do for you. mentally, emotionally, and physically, and spiritually.
And the truth of it is, and this is the truth, I work out 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week, depending on how cranky I am, depending on what my schedule is. 30 minutes, that's it. I am not one to go in there and lift weights, look at myself for an hour and a half in a mirror. Nope. I go in there and I get it done, but I feel good. I get all that endorphins going, get that high going, and I feel good, and it sets the tone for the rest of the day. All right, I quit.
Can I share one quick statistic?
You sure can.
I read this, and this is a true statistic, that those that have dealt with substance abuse, whether it's alcohol or drugs, when they implement an exercise program in their life, their success rate in overcoming that addiction jumps astronomically.
That's awesome.
Because you develop an appreciation for your body. And next thing you know, your mind is saying, I appreciate this thing now. I'm not putting anything in it that don't belong there, right? It's something that naturally happens. I mean, then you got these cats drinking green juice and all this kind of stuff. That's because they've developed an appreciation for this thing that they used to torment with all this toxic stuff, and now they want to put good stuff in it.
I will repair the damage that I have done over all of my shenanigans and behavior. I will do it. With the Lord's help, I will do it. And I feel good during the process. So walking is the single most effective exercise anybody in here can do. Don't think you need to go out and buy gym equipment. Put on your tennis shoe express and hit the street. That's all you got to do. And do it every day. You'll get sunlight that works off the crazy, and I know I have enough of that. Sunlight works off the crazy, and get out there and walk.
So I was getting ready to say, Pastor Jeff, are you telling me I shouldn't eat that piece of cake I got in the back?
Yeah, give it to me.
All right, we're getting off track. All right, we got a few
Okay.
minutes left, so now we need to start identifying some of our addiction triggers, and
Ooh.
we also need to start developing effective ways and coping strategies to overcome those triggers. So, one of the ways you can identify your triggers, I've said this, and I'm not ashamed to say this, Pastor Jeff's got me started on this years ago, is not journal. And I don't journal anything crazy, like Dear Diary, anything like that. Like, I just do a recap. I do start with Dear Diary. Sometimes it's Dear Diary, Burgess picked on me, whatever. But I start with, my mood that day. Was I angry? Was I cranky? All that. Over the last couple of weeks, one of the biggest things that I've given up on, since we're still talking about health and all that, is I gave up caffeine. And I'm telling you, that first
Lord
Wednesday
help
after,
him.
that first Wednesday after I gave it up, I mean, the withdrawals that my body was going through. But I can look back and say, all right, that was what I was going through. So, in the couple years, if, I'm still drinking no caffeine, which today I really wanted one. But I didn't have one. I wanted one. Like, just the triggers. Like, I knew that was a weakness for me today. It wasn't anything or crazy. But, like, I can go back and say, all right, I was stressed that day. This is what I was feeling. This is what I was wanting. So I can go back and say, all right, now I know what to do if that happens again. It doesn't have to be about that I was stressed. It could be that I was depressed, all right? I was depressed this day. What did I do to get out of it? You don't have to journal all the time. If you do it a couple days out of the week, I think Pastor Jeff still does it every day. I do it about 5 days out of the week.
Don't knock it till you try it.
I was one of those guys that did knock it, and now I don't write it out. I'm electronic bound, so like I type it out. And
Here's what it will do. It will keep you knowing where you are.
Yeah.
Okay? That's like you're traveling somewhere. Well, that's not a good example. I always know where my mind is. You're not going to overcome anything if you don't stay aware of what you're fighting.
It's a roadmap to recovery. Because when you see where you are and what your thought processes are.
And, we're all about evaluating ourselves. Well, I evaluate myself when I journal. So every night when I write, I know where I've been that day, and I know where my mind has been, and so I know what I can emphasize, need to emphasize, and not. But anyways, it's been a wonderful tool for me.
Another way, and I know that not everybody can do this or has the access to do it, and that's kind of one of the greatest things that we get to do here and that we offer is having a counselor here. But if you can, get some professional help, whether it's assessment by a therapist or addiction specialist. I know the girls here, they have, their program that they get to do over at, I'm going to forget the name now already, the Revival Center. I think I should know it. My boss owns that place. But you guys have access to that, and that's one of the greatest things. There's other programs here in town that if you're struggling, they can be of no cost. Again, every Monday night we offer a counselor here that can help you kind of start doing some of those things. You can't get too detailed, but it can give you some of those ways to start, and to start, figuring out some of those things and giving you that action plan to continue to go forward.
Can I mention something? Before
Absolutely.
we run out of time, we need to talk about grief, because each and every one of us will deal with grief at some point in your life, at some point. And like I said, I lost my brother almost 4.5 months ago, and so I'm confronted with it every morning and every day, but I know it's coming. And one of the ways I've dealing with grief is I've just been staying active, and I'm not exactly sure if that's Misty, is that right? I mean, I know you're a nurse, you're not the therapist, but you've got to find a way to handle the pain that comes with it, or not really handle it, but navigate it. And so I stay active. It really rises when I go to my mom's house, because my mom was in there and he looked up at her when he took his last breath, and so mom's really steeped in grief. But I immediately try to get her out of the house. Let's go out. Let's go out to Walmart, or let's just go somewhere. And again, it's just that getting that moving and just getting active instead of just sitting there and stewing on it. I gotta get active and putting my mind someplace else and giving us time to kind of work through it.
Do you have something? No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, one thing that helped me is changing my internal dialogue, whether it was when, experiencing grief with my stepdad and having lost my only brother a number of years ago, thinking about them and not getting down on it, but thinking about the life they lived, who they were when they lived, and being positive about that, of course, but and then not throwing myself under the bus for having negative thoughts or feeling down, instead of saying negative things about myself, like, well, you had, where did that come from? You failed, so you're an idiot, or you're stupid. We don't, and I used to think that I could talk bad enough about myself in my head that I would not want to feel that way, but in fact, the opposite happened. So I would always talk myself into wanting to escape my own self, that negative self-talk in my head. So over time, I've changed that. Called it out when I've said it. I've simply just reversed it and said, that's not me, and saying something better about myself in my head. What has God called me? What has He called me to do? And slowly over time, I kept instead of having to redirect myself, I caught myself, saying those positive things, and that led to less triggers as well.
So, there's a couple of us that have dealt with grief in a different way recently here in our own recovery family. And I worked with a guy who came here, who I became really good friends with. And I unfortunately had to fire him on a Monday night, which is a whole other story. But, that same night that we had to have a conversation about him needing to find a new job, he told me, he's like, I still love you. I still look at you as my accountability partner. Then, we lose him a couple weeks later. And I just talked to him that week. And I was, we were talking about the things that he was going on. He was buying a house. He was doing all these things. On the outside, everything looked great. But on the inside, I didn't know what he was struggling with. And we had getting ready for Easter, we texted him asking if he wanted to be a part of the parking lot crew. We didn't hear anything back. And so Cindy, who was in charge of the parking lot team, I was like, well, I'll text him and just kind of joke with him and say, hey, if you don't want to talk, if you don't want to do it, just tell us. We're not going to be mad. And she told me, no, don't do it. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. And I was like, I should text him anyways. But she's like, no, don't worry about it. Don't push the issue. And I went with what she said. And he lost his life the next night. And from a person, from a leader, from somebody that just was told a few weeks before, like, I look at you as accountability partner, the toll that took on me and having to deal with that grief. You know, I can't say his name because of confidentiality, but he knows what I'm talking about. When he told me that Sunday, because I was here that next Sunday, I was like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do anything. I had to run lights, but I was like, I'd mentally checked out. Like, I was done. Like, I didn't want to do anything. And when he told me, you know, about remembering our 12 steps, you know, and I can't work your 12 steps. You can't work my 12 steps. Only he can. But the thing, too, is, you know, knowing that I did everything that I could. Should I have reached out one more time? Maybe. But I didn't. But I can't keep dwelling on that one little thing. Right. You know, even if I had reached out to him that next night, still it could have happened. You know, we don't ever know. But I realized, and there was a whole point to this whole story, is the coping strategies that I had to come up with to get over that. And for like the next couple of days, I was just not my normal self. Like, I was just kind of going through the motions. Like, it was just this Monday, Tuesday, you know, all of that. And I think the final piece that I had was seeing the people that stood on this stage that talked about him, the response that we had in this room that came to show their support for him. You know, I think it was Pastor Jeff that told me his dad thought he had no friends. And I knew that wasn't true. And when I left this campus that night after that service, I had a peace, because I knew, regardless of everything that he went through, that he was struggling with, he was in a better place. I don't want him there necessarily, but he was in a better place. But I also knew that there's going to be other people like that. And I can't let one person's failure change my whole entire stance of how I feel. And you know, I went home, and we're going to joke about it again, but I journaled. And like, that was about 4 pages that time. You know, and every emotion that I had for about a week, I put on that paper. And afterwards, I had a peace and I had a calmness. You know, during that time, I stopped praying too, because I was just so mad. Like, you know, everything that I was going through, like, I was blaming everybody but him. You know, I didn't blame myself, I blamed God, but I knew there's a plan and a purpose. You know, so I had to learn new coping skills, because I hadn't dealt with grief in a long time. You know, I mean, my grandfather passed away a year ago, the 28th of, you know, last month. And, I wasn't close to my grandfather, but I still loved him, and he was my grandfather. But, you know, going to the funeral, it just was, there wasn't that grief that I experienced here. Because regardless if it's your first time, your 100th time, if you've been here 5 years, 10 years, one day, you're our family. And we're going to be there for you. We're going to pray with you. We're going to love you. We're going to cry when you have an issue. We're going to celebrate when you have a victory. And that's not something that we choose to do. That's something that we want to do. I mean, yes, it is a choice, absolutely. But this is something that when we become leaders, we know the responsibilities we're getting into. And we know that we're going to be faced with everything just like you guys are. We're not immune to it because we get to stand on stage, or, you know, we get to have a leadership title. We're not immune to it. You know, and so we go through our own things. I mean, when Pastor Jeff lost his brother, you know, he would come in here and be like, I'm not cool. I'm not okay. I don't know what to do. Like, when our leaders can say that, we build off that and we feed off that. And that's where we kind of get some of our coping skills, is turning to people and admitting when we're hurting.
The end of this end of this lesson is exactly what he just said, is you don't have to walk your recovery journey alone. Keep coming back, you guys.
Any final words?
We can continue this conversation in our small groups, which we're always going to make a point to get to our small groups. And so, who's doing the chips? God bless.